who is wide-eyed to see Layla. As soon as she saunters into the scene, she claims that what Digron is saying is not true. Her father quickly asks what brings her here, and she responds that she happened to hear his voice while taking a walk. Before continuing the conversation, she promptly greets the fatty and Count Sogris. The fatty stutters in surprise as he tries to reciprocate with her gesture, clearly taken aback by the unexpected encounter with the Duke's daughter. Count Sogris then quickly gets to the point and asks her about her claim that Digron was lying. She confidently confirms this, saying she indeed overheard their conversation earlier during her stroll. Digron starts to lose his cool at the thought of her having heard everything, because that is definitely not good news for him. She then goes on to explain all the juicy details, and my guy can't help but smirk at this unexpected twist that somehow turned in his favor. A while later, the fatty tells his trashy son to hurry up and apologize to Count Sogris. The son quickly mumbles, saying he was wrong, but the Count tells him to apologize to Dane instead, not him. The chubster quickly shoves his son towards Dane, telling him to apologize quickly. The bratty son looks uncomfortable, and hesitates before stuttering out a weak, half-hearted sorry. Dane, however, is far from satisfied. He can tell the apology is insincere, just some obligatory gesture because his lie got caught after a third-party witness stepped in. Dane doesn't really want to accept this lame apology, but thinking back to his past experiences, he decides to be the bigger person. Instead of being stubborn, he decides shows some generosity. With that in mind, Dane accepts the bratty son's apology, and the kid lights up with happiness, eagerly thanking our boy for letting him slide. Meanwhile, the fatty father also lets out a sigh of relief, realizing how close he was to losing everything. On the other hand, the Duke, who might just be Dane's future father-in-law, can't help but to think how he already knew Dane was a special kid. After all, he could have easily been stubborn about the whole thing, considering the opposing party was clearly in the wrong from the start. Finally, the Count makes it clear that since Dane accepted the apology, there won't be any further arguing about the incident. However, he emphasizes that he had no intention of letting this slide, especially since Digron attacked Dane in order to kill him. The fatty father starts sweating bullets after seeing the Count so fired up about the situation. As he tries to speak up, the Count tells him to shut his yap and orders him to take his family and leave the castle immediately. The news shakes the fatty's world to its core. If he's thrown out now, his reputation will be shattered, and he's desperate to remain in the castle no matter what it takes. He desperately grabs the Count's hand and starts begging for forgiveness, claiming he'll do anything Sogris asks of him, but he just wants him to forgive him this one time. But the Count quickly yanks his hand away, making it clear he has no need for the fatty. He tells him that soldiers will be arriving shortly to officially escort him out. With that, he starts storming out of the scene with his son, leaving the fatty behind, who is desperately begging for forgiveness. Sogris also tells Duke Thermion it's time to go, and Duke promptly calls for his little girl as they start walking away. As they stroll off, Dane turns his head back to look at them, feeling satisfied that they're getting what they deserve. After all, they started this whole mess, so it's only fair they reap what they sow. Anyway, he learned something important today, which is that his father can be quite scary when he's in angry mode. Duke Thermion then asks him if it's true that he defeated that bratty son of Mogard with a mana bullet, and Dane quickly confirms it. The Duke then can't help but point out how talented Dane is, not just in spear fighting but also in summoning and magic. It's truly outstanding, and he's sure that history has never seen such talent before. The proud father flashes a grin, saying he's also proud to have such an exceptional son. Meanwhile, Dane is just soaking up all the praise while Layla is freaking out, struggling to believe what she's hearing. Duke Thermion then points out that while talent is one thing, Dane is also incredibly calm. Most kids tend to get agitated during fights, and they stubbornly insist that they are in the right, but Dane doesn't do that. The Duke has no doubt that this boy will grow up to be a fine man. The father quickly gives Dane a gentle pat on the head, saying it's too early to tell for sure. They'll have to wait until he's all grown up to see how things turn out. He also points out that it's all thanks to Layla that the incident was resolved peacefully. Without her testimony, things could have turned really ugly. Once Duke Thermion hears this, he's quite surprised that Sogris have such a positive view of Layla. He does not let this opportunity go to waste and tries to downplay her role in the incident, suggesting that if the Count acknowledges her so much, maybe they should start discussing their marriage. Of course, Sogris is startled to hear this, and he can see how eager the Duke is to marry his daughter. To dodge the bullet, he quickly shifts the conversation, noting that the sun is already setting and it's almost time for the banquet. With that, he bolts out of the scene, telling them that he will meet them in the hall. Thermion then also tells his daughter to take her time heading back with Dane. He quickly starts running after the Count, mentioning he wants to have a little chat with him, leaving the two kids behind. As they walk, Layla turns to our boy and asks why the summoned ignored its summoner and obeyed him instead. She claims she's seen famous summoners duel many times in the capital but has never witnessed anything like this. Dane shrugs and admits he's not sure either. It just kind of happened. Of course, Layla pouts annoyingly to see that Dane is intentionally hiding the truth, even though she's the one who helped him get out of that mess. But my guy remains nonchalant and reminds her that he also helped her, bringing up the time when he assisted her with her swordsmanship. Layla thinks back to that moment and reluctantly agrees that he's right. Finally, Dane decides that since they've helped each other once, they can do it again. He tells her she's free to ask him anything. Right away, the girl perks up in excitement as she exclaims that she wants to learn it right now. Dane is startled by her impatience and wonders what could be so urgent to learn. He asks her what she wants to learn, and she quickly tells him to teach her how to use a mana bullet. Dane asks her why she's so eager to learn the mana bullet, and Layla quickly responds that she wants to grow stronger and faster. She hopes to form at least 2 mana cores before entering the academy. Dane wonders why she's in such a rush since she's still so young. He gets the answer for his confusion as soon as she reveals that she wants to grow up quickly to make her mother happy. Her mother loves her a lot, and Layla is certain that becoming stronger would make her proud. Hearing her mention her mother, Dane recalls hearing adults talk about Countess Thermion being bedridden. With that in mind, I guess he has no choice but to help her. Layla bursts into a happy little dance and declares she's ready to start training tomorrow, though she would not mind starting training from tonight as well, especially since she is not sure how long she is going to stay here in the mansion. Dane just shakes his head and tells her she can start whenever she wants. He assures her that once she understands the flow of magic, learning the mana bullet won't be too difficult. Layla then eagerly asks what he'll want in return for teaching her. Dane falls silent, which makes it pretty clear that the request he has in his mind won't be as easy as just showing someone how to use magic bullets. The scene then transitions back to the banquet hall, where guests are whispering and murmuring among themselves about that fat father Tyron. They've heard that Count Tyron got kicked out of the castle, and they're all wondering what he did to deserve that. Some guests mention that Tyron's eldest son caused some kind of incident by picking a fight with the young Master Dane and ended up getting taught a lesson. They chuckle among themselves, amused at the thought of the fat cat coming here only to be humiliated and embarrassed. Word has also spread that young Master Dane is an outstanding summoner. One guest wonders if that means the Sogra's house will now be a prestigious summoner house. However, another chimes in, saying that's not all. Young Master Dane can also use magic, which is something they're having a hard time believing. We then see this big mustachioed man introducing himself to Dane as Baron Opent. He asks our boy if he happens to know anything about the Opent territory in the east. Dane humbly bows his head in respect and replies that he's heard the territory is famously known for its grilled trout and sapphires. The man laughs heartily while admitting that Dane is absolutely right. He goes on to say that the Opent house's trout and sapphires are the best on the continent. He then shoves his daughter forward, saying he almost forgot to introduce her. The girl steps forward and introduces herself as Sylvia Opent and politely greets him. Dane is startled to see her and nervously reciprocates with her gestures and gives his own name. I have no clue why he is so nervous around her, but it looks like we are about to soon find out. She dashes toward him with a mischievous look on her face and whispers that she's heard he's the one inheriting House Sogre's in the future. Dane fumbles out an unsure response, and Sylvia enthusiastically tells him to stop feigning ignorance. She claims that she has heard he's talented in many ways, and bluntly tells him that she will be under his care from now on, especially since there's a possibility they might become family in the future. And there it is. Dane's nervousness around her makes total sense now. This girl is just too direct, and she didn't even hesitate for a second. Right at that moment, Layla joins the scene while Sylvia is still in the middle of shaking hands with Dane. Not surprisingly, Sylvia gets startled to see a potential rival, while Layla is practically throwing daggers towards our boy with her sharp eyes and demanding to know who this lady is. Sylvia recognizes Layla right away and greets her warmly, introducing herself as the eldest daughter of Baron Opent. Layla tries to reciprocate with a gesture, but the anger on her face makes it clear she's far from happy, even though she says it's nice to meet Sylvia. The two ladies exchange smiles that are practically dripping with killing intent. Watching them reminds Dane of a memory, and he can tell that both girls are absolutely ready to throw down. Eventually, Layla grabs his hand and states that she's borrowing him for now since they already had an appointment. She shoots him a death glare as she asks if he remembers their plans. Of course, poor Dane has no clue what she's talking about, but he agrees anyway, apologizing to Sylvia and promising they'll talk again later. Sylvia forces a smile and tells him that they'll definitely talk later. As Layla leads Dane away, Sylvia can't help but feel annoyed how this girl just took him right from her hands. Layla, on the other hand, still hasn't simmered down either. She's absolutely annoyed at the audacity of that girl trying to take Dane from her. Dane finds himself startled under Layla's piercing gaze. He can't help but lament that the darling daughter of the Duke, who holds the second most power in the capital after the Emperor, is no match for the young lady of the Eastern Baron. So it's no surprise that Sylvia just gave up like that. Once Dane and Layla are outside, She starts grilling him about his connection to Sylvia. She wonders if there's a chance he might get engaged to her, but my guy quickly dismisses any such relationship, insisting they were just greeting each other. Layla lights up at the thought, and even Dane can see her mood shift instantly. After walking for a short while, they finally arrive at the secret spot only Dane knows about. He's confident that they won't be bothered by anyone here. As soon as they step inside this hidden place, Layla lights up and begins doing a happy dance, thrilled to see such a beautiful location. She's also relieved that no one will know if they do anything here. Dane agrees, saying she's absolutely right. This is a great place to train. But before starting the practice, he wonders if she's ever felt mana before. Layla admits that she has a little, though it's not enough to form a mana core. She mentions that she's tried to intake mana by breathing it in. Her explanation reminds Dane that she's not at the emission stage yet. He learned to feel mana naturally on the battlefield, so he's amazed that a ducal house would teach her this. He decides to start with something simpler, and tells her that the first step is to feel the mana she's taking in. Layla looks a bit confused by this, so Dane explains that if she wants to expel mana from her body, she needs to learn to control the mana inside her first. The most important part is imagination. He instructs her to close her eyes and imagine the mana swirling within her. However, after a few moments, she tries but there's literally nothing happening. Dane can see by the look on her face that she didn't quite understand the instructions. Layla tries again, but once more, nothing happens. Frustrated, she complains to Dane about why it's not working. Dane reassures her that this is normal for her first attempt, and tells her to focus again. Meanwhile, Count Sogris is sneaking a peek at the two kids. He can't help but feel proud that his son is already teaching someone, even though he's still so young. It truly makes him believe that Dane has grown. Just then, Duke Thermion sneaks up on Sogris and asks him what in the world he's doing there. Sogris' heart nearly skips a beat at the sudden question, but the Duke quickly tells him there's no need to be startled, and asks if he's watching two lovebirds enjoying some alone time together. Count Sogris raises an eyebrow and asks what he means by lovebirds, and besides, how did he even get here? The Duke chuckles at the thought that Count was actually trying to hide in here. He then reminds Sogris how he did a pretty sloppy job of sneaking around, especially since his wife is the Empire's legendary assassin. Poor Sogris has no clue what to say after being caught red-handed sneaking around, while the Duke playfully berates him, reminding him that if the castle's owner goes around peeping on others' affairs, people will speak ill of him. Naturally, the doting father gets annoyed and defensively says that he was just following his son. The Duke chuckled upon hearing this, and couldn't help but point out that he was also just following his daughter. Turns out both of these fathers are hopeless. They stand there, side by side, acting like a couple of teenagers trying to ogle at their kids' interactions as if they were peeping at ladies outside a school gate. Meanwhile, back with the kids, Dane opens up his dimensional pouch, and the girl is quite fascinated to see that he already owns something like this. When Dane mentions that his eldest sister made it for him and gave it as a present recently, Layla starts to feel jealous. Unlike him, her older brothers stopped paying attention to her once they entered the academy. He then pulls out a mirror from the dimensional pouch, and the girl casually asks what they're going to do with it. He explains that he brought it just in case it could help. It's easier to picture something in her mind while looking at a mirror instead of relying on imagination alone. He tells the curious girl to stand in front of the mirror so she can get a full view of herself. The girl quickly positions herself in front of the mirror and starts doing the magic limbo again. This time, Dane can tell she's being quite serious about it. She takes a deep breath while both doting fathers quietly squat down on the ground, as if they're taking Indian-style dump. Duke can't help but point out that Lilia seems to be taking a liking to Dane. Sogris asks if it's really that way, and Duke explains that it is, because it's unusual for Lilia to get along with someone so easily. Sogris asks if that's really the case since she seems like a bright child. Duke Thermion remains quiet for a moment before speaking up, saying she's only bright on the outside, and he can't say the same for what's inside. He explains that after her brothers left for the academy, her mother became bedridden, so they haven't been able to be together like before. This situation has made it difficult for her to open up to others, and that's what's been happening. The Count points out that if he knows everything already, then why is he always acting so cold toward his daughter? Thermion is genuinely moved that the Count noticed something like this and admits he's doing it on purpose. He explains that when he raised his sons, he showered them with attention, and they grew up spoiled rotten. But Sogris reminds him not to assume that Lilia will turn out the same way. She'll be hurt if she finds out, and now it makes sense why she asked Dane for help instead of her father. Thermion then points a finger at his friend, teasing him about still nagging like the old days, but the Count quickly asks when he ever did that, especially since what he said is the truth. Duke changes the subject, asking when he plans to send his son to the capital. He suggests that if he's sending him over, Ducal House will wholeheartedly open his doors and let him stay in the ducal castle. Sogris goes quiet and glances back at his kid.